Okay, so I was writing out my review, or my emotions about Batman versus Superman, or Superman versus Batman. I do not remember which one it is. I don't remember which way it goes, but it started clocking out at, like, way too many words. And I realized what I was doing was basically writing the entire movie out and adding in what I hated about it, like adding in my comments. So, while I might still do that, for now I'm just going to do a spoken review. And we'll see how it goes. This movie, absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And I'm going to preface and add on to the statement by saying, I did not read a ton of the comics as a child, or as an adult, as much as I am one right now. I have select few comics, mostly of the moments that I heard about, and I was like, oh, I would like to see that, and I bought the comic, and I read it, and I kept it. I grew up exposed to the superheroes of the DC universe via the Justice League cartoon. So this is like 2000s and upwards is when I first was exposed to that via the cartoon. I'm not sure when the cartoon came out, like 2003 or something, I don't know. And then it was also like the Batman Beyond cartoon, and Batman the Animated Series, and then the Batman Animated Series. Like, it's just called The Batman, and that was kind of an interesting style change. And the Superman Animated Series, and then the Justice League series is technically, it's like Justice League something. It's like Justice League, and then the next season is like Justice League something. I forget. I have the DVDs though, but so that's how I was exposed to them, and that's the impressions I got for them. And so I don't know the entire history of the comics. I don't know what happens in the comics completely. I know what other people have told me, and I know what I've gathered on my own via small bits. I was definitely more into Marvel than I was into DC, but there wasn't a lot of Marvel TV shows. So, anyways, I hated this movie in terms of how the characters acted and how they responded to things. I never went and saw Man of Steel. I did watch a video of a review, and I watched a bunch of reviews, but I never actually saw the movie in its full self on my own. Does that make me biased and uninformed? Probably. Yes. Probably. Most likely, yes. But it's weirdly like, I don't know. It didn't really affect my viewing of this, I think, in sense of what's going on, because nothing made sense even with the context that I knew. So this movie, basically, first problem I had with it was it does another flashback of the parents being murdered. And while the flashback was beautiful, Batman's parents being murdered, while the flashback was actually very beautifully shot, in my opinion, I really liked the cinematics of it. It wasn't necessary. I didn't need that. And then the follow-up thing that happened right after that is so that's like in the beginning, and what's happening is there's a funeral scene being there's shots of and as they're walking along, they'll flash to the Wayne parents walking down the street, go back to the funeral, watch them walk, go and see them, the guy with the gun approaching them, go back to the funeral, see little Bruce Wayne run away because he's so sad, go back to the, Thomas, pushing his family behind him and getting shot, and, go back to, it kept doing that. And it was a little bit like a flashback within a flashback, and it was not necessary. Not necessary at all. And then what happens is Bruce falls down a hole, and he doesn't die. He doesn't get hurt or anything, but he sees a bunch of bats in a cave. And they all fly up around him, and they fly in a circle around him, and he is lifted off, and he rises into the heavens. And as I'm watching him lift off the ground via the bat's vortex, I am like, this better be like a metaphor or a dream or something, because I was so like, are you kidding me? But Bruce does clarify that is a dream, and apparently, I guess maybe that's what inspired him to become Batman. That's another thing the movie does not make clear, really, is they make it seem like he's only been Batman for 18 months, because the movie is set 18 months after Man of Steel. It kind of makes you think that there wasn't a Batman until Man of Steel happened, and then there was for 18 months. But no, Batman's been around for like 20 years, apparently. I feel like that should have affected something of Man of Steel. Like, maybe they could have been... And I understand, like, trademarks and things, but it was very, like, confusing, and they didn't help matters by the fact that one of the first few scenes in Gotham is 2 cops coming into a house, finding a bunch of, like, women who've been trafficked there as, like, sex slaves, obviously, who are... They're like, oh, you can come out now. And they're like, oh, no, we don't want to because he is still here. And they're like, who? And then one cop goes upstairs because he hears something, and he sees Batman, and he freaks out and tries to shoot him. And he's like, I saw it, oh. And then it cuts to the... And so it makes it seem like he's a recently new thing that's happened. Because the cops are, like, freaked out about it, too. So that's weird, first of all, because later on in the movie, this is all, like, a weird connection-y thing, is later on in the movie, Clark Kent doesn't like Batman, first of all, and he's like, this is a crime against Gotham, and the cops are going along with it. Like, the cops are helping Batman, and that's one of his problems with Gotham. And so you're kind of, like, you've got this weird thing where you're like, the cops are not helping Batman, they shot at him. So who's saying that they're helping Batman? So it doesn't make quite that much sense. Another thing that's weird is, like, Batman obviously has no qualms about killing people in this movie. Like, he literally, like, runs them over in his car and shoots at them with a gun and smashes a truck and kills people. Like, he's killing people in this movie. And I'm shocked a little bit, because that was his problem with Superman, was Superman killed people in Metropolis. Like, that's literally his entire reason for going after Superman, is Superman killed a bunch of people in Metropolis because of, the fighting with Zod. And I mean, one of the things that happens in the beginning of the movie, the 18 months prior to this movie actually happening, is that he flew there in his helicopter. He flew to Metropolis as the fight with Zod is going on, and he's driving a car to go to to a building, I guess, with his employees. And he calls a guy named Jack, and he's like, Jack, you gotta get everyone out of there. And Jack's like, okay. And then he's like, guys, we need to leave. Come on. And I'm like, Jack, there's no sense of urgency here. You're looking out the window watching these people smash buildings and blow things up. Like, that was one of my problems. And then Jack doesn't leave the building. Jack stays there. Jack stays up in the building, like, 18 stories high, just stays there, and Superman crashes into the building and starts cutting it apart with his laser eyes, possibly trying to get Zod. I don't know.
Can I have your keys?
Yep, you can have my keys. You're interrupting me, but you can have my keys.
I just need to get my stuff out of the car.
What stuff?
I left my glasses in there.
Oh, that's true. That was my brother. Okay. I'm assuming he's trying to get Zod with his laser eyes. Regardless, it's a weird thing because he's directly responsible for that building falling. And Jack dies, obviously. And as he's, like, watching it crumble around him, he starts to say, like, a prayer. And it kind of sounds like a specific kind of prayer, but I'm not versed in anything like that, so I have no idea. But it was, like, a very weird scene because I was like, he didn't have to die. The only reason Jack died is for man pain for Bruce, which is interesting because usually, the whole fridge woman trope. But yeah, so there's that. That was weird. The other thing that threw me for a loop is one of Bruce's employees that was there at the building. His name is Wally, and he loses both of his legs because like a girder fell on them, and as he's being pulled out, he's like, I can't feel my legs, and you can see the big gashes, but it didn't look like it was that bad. But I was very horrifyingly confused, and I was hoping that he was not actually Wally West, because I was afraid they were going to make that the reason why he's super fast. Like, they gave him robo-legs. Like, I was like, oh, please don't. And they didn't. They didn't do that. He's just a guy who gets really vindictive, and he's the one who crawls up onto the Superman statue and, like, defaces it, like, with the false god thing, which is, I don't know. So that was an irritation. That was a weird thing that happened, too, is he was, like, important for the first half of the movie, and then something happens, and he's gone. And there's no more mention of him at all. Gosh, there's just so much of this movie, and I'm just jumping back and forth. And it's not going to make any sense unless you've seen the movie. Another problem. The casting, mostly for Lex Luthor. I think the actors are good actors. For, say, like, Superman and Lois Lane and, like, all the other actors. They're good actors. I think they were given bad direction on what the director wanted, and therefore their performances came out strange. But the casting for Lex Luthor, they try to mitigate this. I know, because they're like, the first, like, 10 minutes where he's introduced, he talks about his father, like, for almost the entire 10 minutes. My father did this. My father was this. My father was the Lex before the Corp. My father was blah. And the implication I am assuming is that he is dead. I don't know if they ever come out right and say that. But the implication is that he's gone. And therefore this is now some kid named Alexander Luthor, who is Lex Luthor's son. The way they could have solved this, and my brother actually, who you heard earlier, my brother actually came up with this as I was talking about my problems with this casting. He was saying, what I thought they were going to do, because there is a scene where Lex Luthor is in jail at the end, and someone comes to talk to him. He said, I thought what they were going to do is have his father come and talk to him and say, I'm taking back the company. And I was like, oh my gosh, that would have been really fascinating. Like, I think that would have solved my problems with that character, because he was, like, obviously very young, and if he's, like, I think they kind of played him off as, like, mentally psychotic, which is, didn't like that, but, for a multitude of reasons. But if they had the dad come back, they had actual Lex Luthor come back and be like, look at what you've done, now I have to clean up your mess, and him being like, what can I do with what I have now, which is, I don't know. Maybe he has a vendetta against Superman because he thinks because his son is obsessed with Superman. I think that would have been an interesting twist. But no, that's not the person that comes talks to him, and I'm pretty sure that the dad is supposed to be dead. So, it was just a very odd casting. He acted very manic, I think. And he was, just all over the place. I think this particular actor, I don't know his name, but I recognize him. I think he would have done better as, say, the Riddler. Or even Scarecrow, which would have been cool, like, because he talked a few times about fear, and I was like, that would have been interesting for him. I think he would have done well in that role. But that was one of my problems with the casting. Everyone else, I think, did really well. Lois Lane, I don't know. I don't have an issue with her actress, but I have an issue with her character. she's literally the reason that... Okay, so spoilers. This is a spoiler review, just so you know. Superman dies at the end. And I say, because we all know what... I don't know if you've ever seen that YouTube video of the death of Superman. It's hilarious. Watch it. But it was basically the guy drinking was me this whole time, watching this movie. I say because I knew they weren't going to let him die, really, because they've established that there's a healing coma thing. And 2, because at the very end, there's like a shot of the coffin in the grave, and there's some dirt that Lois dropped on the coffin, to be like, oh, I'm done. And she walks away, and it closes in on the coffin, and you see the dirt start to lift off the coffin, and then it goes black. And I'm like, okay, obviously he's coming back. So, but she's literally the reason that he dies, because Batman makes a spear out of kryptonite to kill Superman. And when she stops him from killing Superman, and they team up to take down... I don't even fucking know his name. Doomsday? I'm pretty sure it's Doomsday. They team up to take him down. She sees the spear and is like, oh, I gotta get rid of this. So she tosses it down a giant stairwell that's filled with water. And then later she goes back to get the spear. She gets trapped in the well of water and is drowning, and Superman leaves the fight, goes and rescues her, brings the spear back up onto the surface, and is then like, because kryptonite, he can't be near it. And she's like, oh no, and he's like, I love you, you're my world. And he takes up the spear and starts to fly. Strangely, it doesn't affect him this time for flying, but he couldn't swim up to the surface while he was holding it, so whatever. But he flies and he stabs Doomsday with it. And I was so frustrated by this fact, because literally all he had to do was give the spear to Wonder Woman, and she could have killed Doomsday with it. I don't know if that's his name. She could have killed the monster. She could have done it. I'm sitting there in the theater watching this going, give it. So frustrated. Another frustrating thing, Batman's like, oh, remember the spear, I gotta lead the monster back towards the spear. I'm like, no, just go get the spear, come back, and kill him with it. Don't make him go, because how are you gonna get to the spear while he is chasing you without him So many problems. So many problems. Another problem. Why on earth is Diana there? Why is Diana Prince, Wonder Woman, why is she there? The reason that they give you for her being at Lex's party and why she snoops around Bruce snooping is that somehow Lex Luthor has obtained her picture, and it's not only a picture of her, but there's also a picture of her from 1918, which I assume is the First World War. I think that's the vibe they're going for. I think that's what they're trying to imply. And, it's obviously her from then in 1918 and her picture now, which would, I guess, prove that she was in both places. So she's like over a century old or whatever. And that's her reason for being there. Later, at the very end of the movie, she says, I didn't want to come back to the world of men. I didn't want to get involved with them again. I did not want to, she's saying, I never meant to come back. I want to know, why did she come back then? Because she apparently Lex first got caught wind of her when she was in France. What was she doing in France then? Why is she in France? Why was she not back with the Amazons? Why was she here? She didn't want to be involved in man's world. It's never explained. That's the reason, though. That's the reason she is at Lex Luthor's place. at the same time that Bruce is there because it's like a party. I didn't even know that was supposed to be Wonder Woman until the second time she showed up on screen. And I leaned over and I was like, is that supposed to be Wonder Woman? And my brother was like, yeah, that's the person playing. And I was like, oh crap. That's how weird this is for me. Another thing wrong, and I'm going all out of order. Another thing weird is that, well, it's not so much weird as just Bruce is the one that's putting the league together. And I can't remember who did it in the first season. I mean, in Justice League, the cartoon series, it was like Martian Manhunter contacted them all because he was like, I need your help. But I don't know from the comics who did it. But it's interesting to me that he is the one doing it. And the sad thing about the reason he's doing it is that he's like, I won't fail Superman in death. He's like, I failed him in life, I won't fail him in death. So he's doing this in Superman's honor. Superman never said anything about collecting everyone who was... He didn't even know about the others. That's the other thing. He has no idea there's other people with superpowers. This is only a thing that Batman and Wonder Woman know. Because Lex Luthor's computers, files, whatever, had... he had pictures of who the Flash was, he had pictures of Aquaman, and he had pictures of Cyborg. Which was interesting seeing their cameos. I was very disappointed Aquaman did not have a bigger role than that. Because they played it up a little bit, and I was like, that would have been cool. He does look gorgeous, though. I will say that. My biggest problem with this movie is the reason that... Okay, so Batman wants to kill Superman because Superman has killed people as collateral damage. I don't think he's actually gone outright and killed people. Superman, I mean. But the collateral damage of people is too much for Bruce to be like, this guy can still be a person and exist. So he forges weapons and he is going to kill Superman. He beats Superman down because he gets kryptonite. So he beats Superman down and he is about to stab him with the kryptonite spear. And Superman starts saying, no, you have to save her. You have to save Martha. Now, to be clear, there's obviously some lingering trauma over Bruce's parents' death. However, the trauma that was shown him having dreams about and him having weird conflicting emotions about was about Superman alone and what Superman would kill, like Superman would kill the world. That's what he was having dreams of. That's what he was scared of. They didn't really mention his parents' death except for one strange dream where a bat burst through the cemetery and killed him, sort of. So Superman is saying, no, you have to save Martha. There's a plot where Martha gets kidnapped by Lex Luthor, and that's the reason Superman is fighting Batman, otherwise he would not have done it. Anyways, he says, you have to save Martha. Batman starts freaking out, starts screaming, how do you know that name? Why are you saying that name? What are you talking about? And Superman is just saying, Martha, Martha, no, you have to save Martha. Lois Lane shows up, because she took a helicopter out there, and runs in, and she's like, bye, Superman, who Batman's got the spear on him, like, near his neck, and he's like, why are you talking about Martha? And Lois is like, that's his mother's name! And I am not kidding you. Batman goes, for 2 seconds, steps back, and goes, okay, how do I help you get her? That is the only damn reason that he stops fighting Superman. I don't even know how to talk about it. I'm so frustrated, the fact that he has a mother named Martha apparently outweighs the fact for Batman that Superman has caused hundreds of people to die. and it's presented as a sane decision. They don't talk about it ever again! Which is what makes Batman's line at the end of the movie, "I failed him in life, I won't fail him in death," all the more ridiculous. He wanted to kill this person, and now that this person is dead, he feels sad and remorse. And he's like, I will continue his legacy, the legacy which he was trying to destroy earlier. I'm so annoyed. I started laughing in the theater, I actually did. Because I was just like, all sanity is non-existent in this universe. It's non-existent. Also, for some reason, the Wayne Manor is, like, burned down. And, like, it's a burnt-out shell. I don't understand what happened. They never explain it. Maybe there is an explanation of Man of Steel. There's no explanation in this movie for me to know. I don't understand. But yes. This damn movie. I feel like I'm forgetting things. The reason the Wally guy shows up, he's literally just a weird, guilt-trippy thing for Superman, and then he blows himself up. Or Lex blows him up. They never actually decide whether or not the Wally guy was in on the plan, because he has to use a wheelchair, right? Because his legs are gone. Lex Luthor gives him a wheelchair and makes him presentable and has him ask for a hearing, like a court hearing for Superman. Superman shows up. The lady in charge, I forget her name, but she's like a senator from Kansas or something, is like having horrible like realizations that Lex Luthor set her up because he's not there. His assistant Mercy is there. Mercy's dead, by the way. She blew up. And she... Do you remember when the people were talking about that line about, well, you can piss in a jug and call it Granny's apple cider and I won't fall for it, or something like that. She gets she sits down at her seat and she starts talking and she notices like a little mason jar of yellow liquid and it says Granny's, I think it's peach. Granny's peach tea or something. But, and she starts stuttering and she looks around and she notices that that Lex is gone and people are like, what is she doing? Like, they're like, what's going on? And then the room blows up. And Superman is standing there and he cries. It's actually cinematic. Cinematically, it's shot very nicely. It's a very stunning visual. Within the context of the movie, it's just frustrating. It's implied. Well, it's not implied. Basically, I think the reason he blew her up, Lex Luthor, I mean, is because she wouldn't let him bring kryptonite into the country, so he did it illegally. And she basically was like, I guess he felt insulted. I don't know. Like, he got the kryptonite into the country before she blew up, if I'm remembering correctly, which I might not be because there were so many weird jump cuts in this movie. I'm actually very headachy. Shaky cam was off the charts, by the way. Fighting is awful. The fighting scenes were awful because shaky cam everywhere. I was like, you don't need a shaky cam because we're not getting a first-person view. We're just watching them fight. So, that was obnoxious. Batman did the total supervillain thing where he, like, had the spear over Superman and he was going to stab him, and then all he did was, like, scrape his little cheek and he was like, and then he was going to stab him, and that's why Lois had time to get there. Diana, I guess, felt guilty and decided to help out. I don't know. I don't even understand anymore. Like, this movie was so frustrating, and my brother tries to argue for it in the sense that it's realistic. I don't feel like it's realistic. Like, a lot of these things just didn't make sense. There was Lex Luthor is threatening Superman. Just one part. He's saying he's like, what gives birth to demons. It's witches. And he's like, and what happens to witches? They're supposed to be burned at the stake or something like that. And he like throws pictures on the floor, and it's of Martha Kent, and she has witch written on her forehead. And when they show you Martha later, she doesn't have it on her forehead. So it's like they wrote it on there and then they cleaned it off. It doesn't make any sense to me. It was so much Jesus imagery, though. So much. So much Jesus imagery. Constant. Even in the end. I think there's that picture of some concept art where it's like a direct like reference to the painting, and I was like, it's so annoying. Like, it was annoyingly too much. Too much Messiah-ic references. I don't even know if that's the right pronunciation for that, or whatever. Oh my gosh, this movie is so annoying. I don't like it. It's bad. It's terrible. It's a bad movie. Desaturated, annoyingly. People's motivations don't quite make sense. I don't understand how the Kryptonian ship it's absolute bullshit. Everything that happens with the Kryptonian stuff, bullshit. The doomsday comes from Lex Luthor cutting his hand, dropping a few drops of blood on top of Zod's body, and the ship being like, okay, we can create a new being, and it does it. And he's this gray-skinned doomsday monstrosity that can fire, like, lasers out of his eyes. Also, when Superman is fighting Doomsday, he takes him up in the sky, and the people at the White House are like, oh, good, they're far enough, like, they're high enough now that if we shoot a nuke, we will not get any effects. That didn't make sense to me. I'm not a nuclear scientist. I don't know anything really that in-depth about nuclear stuff. I don't know anything about nuclear bombs. But I feel like if you shoot it into the sky, it's going to come down. Like the radiation, I don't know. All it did in the movie sense was make Superman have to float in space, and then another Jesus reference where he's like bony and like chipped away because of the radiation, and the sun restores him, and he like opens his eyes and he's got like the red laser eyes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, give it a break. And it makes Doomsday stronger because the stuff he's hit with makes him stronger. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know what happens with the Kryptonian ship afterwards. They don't ever talk about it again. It was pretty bad. The soundtrack was good, but I'm very loving of most movie soundtracks, so, you know, what's my opinion worth? Nothing. So, it was terrible. I probably will not buy it on DVD. I will probably do something illegal to watch it and criticize it again if I ever watch it again, which I probably will only watch parts at a time because it's jump cut to hell and really frustratingly hard to follow. And I paid $7.50 for that movie, to go see that movie. Not worth it. Not worth it a bit. I feel really bad for Ben Affleck. That poor dude. Look at the movies he's had to do. Ugh. I think he's a good actor. I think the director ruined him. That's my opinion. And I don't know what else to say about it. It's crappy. It's terrible. Don't watch it. Don't watch it. Do yourself a favor and go watch the old Superman films, because they're 1,000 times better than this. And they make 1,000 times more sense. And that is very, very sad. So that's it.